Coffee houses, clubs, and neon lights. I rock the people my way. Working my way, coming back to you. Working my way, coming back. Take me home tonight, not wasting any time. Highway 95, engines on overdrive. From town to town, and in between, I see you in the morning light. New York, Boston, Philadelphia, LA, I still see your face. Buses roll, distance grows, but I remember you're just a dream away. Working my way, coming back to you. Working my way, coming back. Take me home tonight, not wasting any time. Highway 95, engines on overdrive. From town to town, and in between, I'll see you in the morning light.
65 episodes of What Are the Odds with Barnes and Baris. Number 65. You know, for a show that goes maybe once a month until we get toward the election, it's quite a few in a short time. It feels like it flew right by. All right, Barnes will join us soon. When he does, we'll talk about the Trump indictment. I'm a big believer in staying in your own lane, right? So before Barnes gets here, and we'll break down what the indictment says. It always takes time to really look through these things and process these things. And remember, an indictment is the prosecutor putting their best foot forward. However, this indictment, now you don't need to be a lawyer to know that there is no criminal charge for the Presidential Records Act. So they ironically, and in case you guys haven't seen the irony here, they ironically chose to charge him using the act that many believed Hillary Clinton should have been charged with, the Espionage Act. But as James Comey said, no reasonable prosecutor would ever bring a case like this against a candidate for president. Remember that? I'm old enough to remember that. 10,000 emails under congressional subpoena, destroyed, deleted. That would be, because of how they're charging Trump, by the same standard, 10,000 individual charges of obstruction of justice. But like I said, that's Barnes's lane. Look, I don't know why some people just don't like to hear the truth. All right. So every time, speaking of President Trump, every time President Trump retweets something of yours, people go ape shit. They lose their minds. All right. And I put up the national, and I'll put it up here in a second, but I put up the national graphic in an additional way. Like when you hear, all right, Trump's just under 60 at, we have him at 59.7 to 17.7 for Ron DeSantis. So let's call it 60 to 18. I'm trying to illustrate to you by showing you this map how dominant a lead like that really is. And the truth is, a lot of people didn't want to believe, and they don't seem to understand statistics, and they don't really understand what it means when a candidate is above 50%. And I've tried to explain to you that in the simplest possible ways I can. It is now incredibly difficult to defeat somebody who is above 50%. Forget about now, he's at 60%. Why? Because now you have to undecide people, okay? You have to stop. There's only 3% left that's undecided. 3 to 5% in our national state polls. That's not enough. It's not even enough if you clear the entire field. You're still going to lose. If every single Mike Pence voter and every single Christie voter, which there's like 10 in the entire world, if every single Nikki Haley voter, if every single Tim Scott voter went to the next closest candidate, Ron DeSantis, he still wouldn't come close. It still would not be a close race at all. I tried to explain this to some people who just want to stick their fingers in their ears like little babies and go, la, 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 you're a bad person. 20 years ago, you were you had a problem. It's pathetic. And all you have succeeded in doing, because now it wasn't 12 hours after Trump retweeted it that the CBS News poll came out. And by the way, the YouGov panel, which is used by Yahoo News, CBS News, and I think now sometimes in some instances, even parts of NBC are using. YouGov is a data set. It is an online panel. They're all basically buying the same data set and then weighting it how they want to weight it. It has been in the what we call DeSantis bullish DeSantis polling universe. It was late to the party. We were somewhere in the middle. When others had Trump at like 50, we had him at like 43, 45%. And we had DeSantis as high as 31. What I've tried to explain to people is this strategy of, oh, wait until he gets indicted, telling all these donors. You think that voters weren't going to understand what was happening here? Then you were smoking something. You were lying to yourself. And what the Harvard-Harris poll has shown, and what our polling has shown, what the CBS News poll has shown, and TIP just came out a little bit before the show started, the IBD TIP poll. And I'll show it to you. They said they called his lead insurmountable. Why? Because DeSantis is starting to hurt himself now. His favorability numbers are crashing in his own state, let alone nationally. People are seeing what's going on. And as I'm relaying that this is going to happen, people just want to attack and smear and pretend like it's not reality. It is reality. Let's pull this up, actually, because this is still a poll that's fairly bullish on DeSantis. Meaning, they not bullish, but we have them in their different universes, where Emerson was certainly considered Trump bullish in our categories. We, until recently, were somewhere in the middle, but now we can see it. We have DeSantis at 18. By the way, so does IBD TIP. The CBS YouGov data set has him slightly higher. It's an educated data set. It's also, there's no way to verify whether or not these people are truly registered voters. You don't know. They could just be doing it because they want the compensation that comes with doing mass surveys. Even with the indictment, this is where we're at. Indictment was politically motivated. Documents were a national security risk. Both. All right, so you have some people who say you know what? I didn't like it when Hillary Clinton did it. I don't like it when Trump did it. We're not talking about the legal issues here. I'm talking about people's opinions. But at the same time, I know it's politically motivated and people don't like it. There's becoming a realization now. And really, this is the question going forward. Will voters get punked? Democrats are very easy to punk and scare. They don't get to pick their nominees. Barack Obama and the national media pick them for them. They wanted Bernie Sanders both times, and both times they did not have the courage to follow through. They believed all of the things meant to scare them into voting for somebody else. Both times. The heart of the party in 2020 was with Bernie Sanders. Entire states, if you ask them, who did you really want to be the nominee? Minnesota, Maine, all over the country. They wanted Bernie, but they were scared by the media and the things that they saw and heard in the media. And Barack Obama burned up that phone and made sure that everybody got out of that race because everyone's scared of Barack Obama on the left. And the bottom line is here, the question for me is not whether or not these voters are going to abandon Trump. It's very simple. He never abandoned them. They feel they can't abandon him. It's called a mutual respect. He has earned their trust and their loyalty. Nobody else has done that. And in fact, DeSantis is starting to hurt himself with a large chunk of the Republican electorate. They see him for frankly what he is, which is the alternative candidate, the settlement candidate, the approved candidate, the replacement candidate for when the administrative state, if and when they're successful at removing Trump from the ballot or somehow not allowing him to run for president. And all this primary has done so far is make Mike Pence one of the most hated people in the Republican Party. And DeSantis is on his way. Well on his way. And you can see it. So here, in fact, likely GOP, rest of the country. So you see how these people view this. For the better, for the worse, won't change anything. It depends. All right. If convicted, Trump should still be able to be president, 80%. I actually have to say something. I'm stunned at how so-called people who think, these people think they're so smart. They're not nearly as smart as they think they are. How to beat Donald Trump in a primary, to me, is actually a fairly easy question. There's a fairly simple answer. And I'm stunned I appear to be the only person in the world who knows the answer to it. And at this point, I wouldn't sell it for $1 billion. I'll tell you all when this process is over. All right, but mark my words, I will tell you. I promise I will tell you. But every time somebody thinks they're going to do it, they just use the same damn playbook and then wind up with a 40% very unfavorable rating in their own party. It's really rather stupid. Anyway, so the multiple things in this poll suggest that Trump's real ceiling in the Republican primary is around 85%. All right, 80 to 85%. Very important. They do want him to talk about what they're going to do. Look at that. 80% have a plan to lower taxes. And Donald Trump is literally the only candidate in the race who can say, I actually did it. And that has been a major thing that has been a major reason why potential challengers were always going to be limited on how they could attack this man. All right, moving on. This is what they want Trump to talk about. Yeah, I don't care about all that really, basically. If Trump is not the nominee, 3/4 of the party, it's an America First party now. That's it. They want their candidate to be like Trump. Approach to governing. Find common ground with Democrats. Non-MAGA Republicans do not want that. Non-MAGA Republicans do want them to find common ground, but they are the minority of the party. More important for GOP nominees to appeal to independents or to motivate conservatives and Republicans. this has been a long time question. What is the best way to win a general election? It's very simple, folks. They're talking about appealing to the middle is overrated. It absolutely is overrated. The bottom line is, if you do not believe and show conviction in your own agenda and who you are and what the vision is that you have for the country is, policy and otherwise, if you spend all your time looking squishy, you look like you do not have that conviction because you're trying to appeal to the middle. And all you'll do is demotivate your base anyway. Mitt Romney won the middle. He still got his ass kicked. Mitt Romney won the middle. He did. The problem for Mitt Romney is Barack Obama said to hell with the middle. I'm going to drive my turnout up among my own people. And the electorate was D+5 and Mitt Romney lost. And he lost badly. Bottom line is here, who are you considering to vote for? This is where they're at right now. Who would you vote for now? And again, this is high compared for DeSantis compared to us. We have him at 18. The IBD tip poll that just came out, they have him at 18, maybe 19 or something like that. Emerson has him at 16. So I think Morning Consult now has him back up to 20. But here's the bottom line, folks. Who are you considering? Plus, who would you vote for? And the fact of the matter is, DeSantis barely gets to a bare majority if you could get the guy out of the race. So the bottom line is, Trump's ceiling is much bigger. Look at that. That says everything you need to know. And Robert's here, so before we go to the legal, I do want him to react to this. I mean, Robert, welcome to What Are the Odds, brother? This says it all. I don't know how much more accurate I could call the series of events that have transpired, like I have called this primary and the events of this primary. That is not good enough. DeSantis, again, and this is why it is his strategy, and it's Pence's too. They all run around telling donors that he will be indicted and removed, and that's why I'm running. They need him to be. Not only will they not rally behind him, Robert, they want him out. They need him out. He can, and somehow DeSantis thinks after this is all done, if they get their way, Trump voters are just going to come out and vote for him or something. This is delusion, Robert. Delusion. Welcome to the show, brother. Let me get your, that chart says it all, man. That chart says it all. Let me get your take on it.
I think now all the polls show what we predicted, which is that the indictment of Trump would rally support behind Trump. It would not hurt Trump. This is what the DeSantis campaign, the Pence campaign, the Scott campaign, the Haley campaign, the Christie campaign, the Hutchinson campaign, all these campaigns were relying upon the assumption, but especially DeSantis, who was in a position to be on the ticket, turned it down because he was told and convinced in the summer of 2022 that Trump was going to be taken out with all these indictments and that he didn't want to saddle himself to a losing cause and that he could replace Trump and that all he had to do was put his hat in the ring. Rupert Murdoch guaranteed him $10 million if he ran laundered through a book deal. And you combine those two, and that's why he's in. But what they got wrong, we've been trying to tell him all the way through, is that these indictments would not hurt Trump politically. These indictments will help Trump politically on multiple grounds. One, they just don't know their political history. I mean, even recent political history. People forget they tried to take out Bibi in Israel using indictments. It hasn't worked. They tried to take out Jacques Chirac in France using indictments. Didn't work. They tried to take out Edwin Edwards, a great governor of Louisiana, populist from the left, but a populist. I think they indicted him 5 times. In 1991, he won on a slogan of "Vote for the crook." It's important. The indictments never worked. They tried to impeach and indict Huey Long. It just rallied his support. They tried to impeach and indict Alabama Governor Big Jim Folsom. He won by bigger margins than any governor in the history of the state of Alabama. They indicted Jimmy Curley, mayor of Boston, right before an election. He won and won big. They indicted, in my hometown, James E. Bookie Turner, fire and police commissioner. They indicted him right during the runoff. He won. He got a bigger turnout in 1967 than had ever voted in the history of the city, including for president. They came out for a local election and voted a higher number than president, unheard of. And they rallied. If you know populist candidacies and candidates and campaigns, you know that indictments reaffirm their bona fides. It convinces more of the populist audience the guy must be for real because the system is desperate to take him out using legal lawfare to do it. And so if you knew that history, you knew the reaction of the Republican. This is not George W. Bush's or Poppy Bush's Republican Party. This is a very different Republican Party. And we can talk about that as we proceed, as the MAGA coalition continues to evolve, as Jesse Kelly needs to get out more because he doesn't understand what's happening in the real political electorate.
Yeah,
and a lot of these other people who are operating on they're operating on an old script that doesn't apply anymore. And the Biden administration knows it. The Biden administration knows the only person who can beat him is Trump. Nobody else can beat him. That may sound insane for a guy that has the negatives that he has, but it's the reality of the opposition, that the people who are looking to vote, only want a populist alternative. The Democratic Party will deny Robert Kennedy the nomination, even if the party wants him to win. In terms of the voters, because that's just the way the Democratic Party works with its superdelegates and all the rest. But the Republican Party's only chance and Biden's only risk is a Trump 2024 campaign, and that's why he's focusing on him. But the problem is this keeps backfiring. Every time he's indicted, like they had on the street interviews this weekend with younger working class black men who are like, man, Trump must be for real. Because the man is really out to take him out. And it was Trump went, if you were a millennial voter in 2016, Trump was, in particular if you were a minority millennial voter.
Minorities,
Trump was not hip. Trump was this sort of old, big corporate, big money. That's how he was portrayed in that world. Quasi-fascistic. That's why Eminem and Snoop Dogg and everybody's ragging on him. And even though Trump had some appeal amongst older black men who didn't like independent black men, or middle-aged black men, Gen Xers, etc., from his days when he was a rap icon in the 80s and 90s, from his style. Flashing the gold, flashing the planes, flashing the broads, all the rest. Very hip-hop style of success. Amongst younger people, like my daughter's son, had their generation, Trump was like uncool, man. He was like, no. All these indictments, a combination of the lockdowns, what happened during the lockdowns and the pandemic, and that Trump was the only voice pushing back against that compared to Biden and everyone else at the national level. The combination of that, plus the economy tanking, plus all these indictments, has remade Trump. Thanks in part to the young meme makers on the Donald the Reddit and the Donald the Win and the salty cracker crowd out there, the salty army, that they have reinvented Trump in the millennial community. And more of them think, two things are happening. Also, more working class millennial voters are voting. Your early voters and generationally tend to be your upper middle class student voters. That's why it tends to skew you look at the 18 to 24 vote and you get a very different vote than what that looks like when they're 35 to 40, because all of a sudden your working class kids just generally don't vote. They just start voting once they're parents. They start voting when they got to pay taxes. They start, et cetera. But the big shift is that all these indictments make Trump look like the ultimate outsider, the ultimate underdog, the guy that's really challenging the corrupt deep state and the system.
Why do they want this guy so much? Why are they going after him so much? He must be a threat to them.
The guy must be legit. Yeah. I mean, he's one of us. He's an honorary black man. Yeah. He's being falsely charged.
That's right.
That's the net. Yeah. Remember how they made Bill Clinton like the first black president? Trump's the real first black president. The Barack Obama, if you want to call him black, good luck at it. Talk to people in the black myth community. Will be honest with you, they don't think Obama's black either. He's as white.
Trump has definitely got more hours in a ghetto than Barack Obama.
Oh, by a long mile. There's a lot more rap odes to Trump than there ever will be to Obama.
Totally.
But now he's a legit black guy because he's getting railroaded. He's getting falsely charged. The man is trying to run him into prison. Right. So all this does is reaffirm Trump's base, number one, and number two, expand his base into people who perceive him differently now. They don't perceive him as this sort of old, quasi-fascistic, right-wing, big money New York guy. They increasingly perceive him as the outsider, as the insurgent, as the guy trying to take down the man that the man is trying to take down. And what that has done is massively shifted millennial votes. I mean, you follow YouGov. YouGov had the 30 to 44 group, which is mostly millennials, voting for Trump was losing them by 20, lost them by 25. Romney lost them by bigger. McCain lost them by even bigger. Bush got crushed amongst them in 2004. But now, according to YouGov's polls now for 2 months running, Trump is dead even amongst millennial voters. So it fluctuates between even and like 5-7 point Biden lead. What do you have it?
Oh, we got it. You know what? I can look at it right now. I'm really close. And when we split 18 to 29, or 18 to 24 and 25 to 29, man, that 18 to 24 category is just stunning. It's stunning what's happened. And, I think that people are not paying enough attention. I mean, you are, yeah. I am, but
Agreed.
The Florida poll we had the other day, Trump isn't carrying every single age group against Joe Biden in the state of Florida. Every single age
that's
group.
What's happening in some of these national
and DeSantis
polls.
is not, by the way.
I mean, in a lot of these national polls, if you look at DeSantis gets nowhere amongst millennials and Zoomers. He just gets nowhere. And for those who don't know, I mean, Trump basically, depending on the poll, either split or won Gen Xers, won Boomers, won the silent generation in 2020. He lost amongst millennials and Zoomers, but he shrunk the margin substantially. Yeah. That's why it was much closer than the polls expected. He shrunk that, according to Pew, to a 20-point deficit. It was a 25 to 30-point deficit in 2016. It was more like a 40-point deficit in 2018 for Republicans. You had this trend where the millennials were just rejecting Republicans writ large. They have ever since they've been able to vote. And all of a sudden in 2019, that started to slightly shift. Trump started making inroads, eating into those margins. And then it really shifted since 2020. And it was once Trump got screwed out of the election, the economy tanked, old man Biden is this running joke. And then the system kept trying to sue him into oblivion and indict him into oblivion. That millennial vote has just continued to trend towards Trump, but mostly and only uniquely Trump. They're not trending Republican. They're rejecting the Democratic Party, but they're not embracing the Republican Party.
Yep. Biden beats DeSantis in the 18 to 24 category. And they're a very undecided group, the 18 to 24.
Well, a lot of those people that would vote Trump in that group won't vote if DeSantis or
that's exactly right, Robert. That is exactly.
And all of a sudden that will go back to being a plus 20, plus 25 Democratic margin, just because they're not voting.
We got it right now, 38 to 17 over DeSantis. Yet Biden is actually 3 points lower against Trump, and they're only separated by 3 points. So
exactly.
and it's just
that's all
literally doubles. He gets double the support. Double the support.
I mean, that's the key, is the millennial, and that's what people are missing in all of this. They're not understanding why Trump is doing well, why Trump is beating DeSantis by the margin he is, why Trump is doing better than DeSantis against Biden. You have people like Jesse Kelly, and for the record, I like Jesse Kelly.
Me too.
Been on his show, all the rest. But people like Jesse and others are living in a 2016 script. They're saying, Trump can never win young voters. Trump can never win women voters. Trump can never win minority voters. Trump can never win suburban voters. And that a generic Republican would win all those voters.
Yeah, okay.
They've always been wrong on the second premise, but they've missed the boat over what's been happening in the last 3 years, which is that in general, they've missed the boat because the electorate is constantly shifting.
That's right.
And generationally, the reason why Democrats thought Republicans would be completely DOA by now is because, you look at Romney's 2012, depended almost entirely on a generation of voters who were literally dying off. Lost the millennial Zoomer vote by 25, 26 points, depending on which survey you look at. But he won amongst boomers, and he won big amongst the silent and greatest generation. That voter group, was almost 20% of the vote in 2012. It was 10% of the vote in 2020. It's going to be single digits by 2024.
Yeah.
And the reason why Democrats thought they could do well is that the millennials had been such a Democratic friendly voting group, much as boomers were when they started out voting, like in 1972, and later stage boomers. I mean, were aligned in that class too, but the boomers ultimately shifted over time. But they thought millennials wouldn't, because they'd won the culture war this is the generation that grew up with safe spaces and all that stuff at high school and college. And, you go on kid dates, you don't go on you don't go out and play in the street, etc. And they voted, by almost 30 points for John Kerry, those that could in 2004, voted for Obama by 35 points in 2008. 2012, a bunch of them were disappointed and didn't turn out. But Obama still held about 26 points. Trump ate into that. Hillary only won him by 24, so just a little bit. But then he ate into it more and lost him by 20 in 2020. But the big shift, the reason why is Trump suddenly in polls like YouGov and that had him down by 10 to Biden in 2020, polls like ABC that at different times had him down double digits, both in 2016 and 2020.
14 points. Yep.
Exactly. Why are they suddenly predicting Trump winning the national popular vote, which would be an electoral college swing? It's because of three groups: young voters, minority voters, and women.
Yeah.
And these are what I call the last gasp of the Democratic working class. That's the white working class man they've lost a long time ago, outside of maybe a unionized janitor who works at a government agency someplace. They've or maybe a 70-year-old old union guy who doesn't trust Republicans no matter what. Outside of that, they have pretty much no working class white male support. And the only question is whether on the Republican side they get that vote out, because that vote often just doesn't turn out unless Trump's at the top of the ticket.
Unless Trump's there, Robert. That's right. The thing. We have said this over and over again, that even if you can get them out, there's no guarantee they'll vote for you, because they really don't like Republicans. They vote for Trump when he's on the ballot and give other Republicans the benefit of the doubt, and maybe will support them. Although there is ticket splitting with that voter. You could see it in Ohio and other places. But, Parnell was on last Wednesday, and it's like the stupidity of this idea that this vote somehow is going to come out and still vote for them, as if they were they were not paying attention. A friend just texted me, big smile faces DeSantis at 19 in the tip poll. The IBD tip poll just came out. It called Trump's lead insurmountable. They're trying as statisticians to explain to people that this is not going to hurt him. It's going to help him. And not only that, but above 50% is above 50%. Why are we still trying to explain the significance of this to people? It's a grift, Robert. The hubris of the argument is stunning. It's stunning. These people never came out. The Bushes, period. That kind of Republicanism. Turn them off from that party. Some of these older ones that are like this independent, they voted for Obama a bunch of times. This independent vote that turned to Trump. That's one of those groups. They don't understand.
Didn't vote. It was Sean Trendy's lost majority back before Sean Trendy had a job at Ohio State and actually understood what populism was and wasn't infected by TDS. My friend Tom Bevan at Real Clear Politics. Time to move on. I love Sean, but he has lost his friggin' mind.
There's no objectivity
he actually put out a Twitter thread that said it was okay to let Hillary walk, but it was right to indict Trump. Sorry. And this is, a month after Sean got caught lying about Trump repeatedly, repeating 2016 lies, no less. So I like Sean, but he's clearly lost his mind since he got his job at Ohio State. Yeah. It's the nature of academia. He's a Yalie now. That's who he is. He ain't an Oklahoma boy anymore. Oklahoma boy is long gone. But this mentality, what they're missing as much as anything, other than
rodeo, Robert, was a perfect example. You just brought up Oklahoma. What happened with the rodeo? They're like, who the hell is this guy, and why is he interrupting my rodeo? They give him the microphone, and he's like, "Hey, everyone," and you could just see people like, "Shut up, man! I'm watching the rodeo." He can't even go to a rodeo in Oklahoma. Forget
Yeah,
about
exactly. Well, he's never been a natural.
the octagon.
But the key is for people to understand why Trump is doing so much better than DeSantis, why Trump is doing against Biden and also against DeSantis in the primaries, why Biden administration is only worried about Trump and not worried about anyone else, why they're escalating to these crazy indictments, why they might tag on another DC January 6th indictment to go with it all, is that Trump is breaking through to the new working class. The new working class is younger, millennial and Zoomers, disproportionately, though not majority, disproportionately African American and Mexican American, and disproportionately female, particularly those that are part of the Democratic base. These are women that have effectively been forced into the workforce by the cultural changes over the past 30, 40 years, but really by the economic changes that no longer give men the ability to support a whole family on their single income. And so you have this, and these are the part of the millennials that are just entering the voting force. They've been there. They just didn't vote in their teens. They didn't vote in their 20s. They start voting in their late 20s and 30s. And then you have the political shift amongst Zoomers that has grown up in the Gamergate era that, is influenced by the cultural changes, by the neurotics and by the Steven Crowders. Steven Crowder's average audience is in their 20s, men in their 20s. That these are people that have been part of the counterculture war over the past decade. And you combine these two voter groups, they love Trump uniquely. Yeah. They are not interested in the Republican Party as a brand. They're not so opposed to the Democratic Party that they'll vote Republican reflexively. They are not so hating Biden that they'll vote for anyone that's running against Biden. They are still skeptical, what used to be called the politically disinterested or the politically alienated, when Pew would do its tribal groups or when other people would do their tribal groups. These are people that, they answer questions like, do you think people in Washington care about people like you? Questions like that, they are overwhelmingly no and negative. Trump got it. So you have two groups, older working class voters, disproportionately men, disproportionately white, disproportionately in the Midwest, who are disproportionately listed as disabled or unemployed, not looking for work. If you go back and look at Richard's poll, Richard's one of the only people polling on this, you'll see that category is where DeSantis has a 20-point drop-off from Trump. And what's even worse is that most of those people just won't vote if it's not Trump on the top of the ticket.
And then you have another group, too. The Marquette
which is the new millennial Zoomer working class that likes Trump and doesn't like anybody else. And it's up there about 20% of that group. And it's either Trump or bust for that entire group. And the more the system goes after Trump, the more that voter loves Trump.
Even in Florida, we haven't put out the general election poll yet. I was talking to a reporter from USA Today. It's really a local paper, but it's owned by USA Today. And we're going to put it out soon, but I'll just tell you what it is. Trump is ahead in Florida by 11 points, and DeSantis is ahead by 8. Now, these are numbers we never, Robert, following my polling a long time, Florida usually is on a razor's edge. But because of everything I have told people about Florida for years, you should not have been surprised that DeSantis won by that big of a margin. And it's a gubernatorial election. It's not a presidential election. There are voters who did not vote in 22 who will vote in 24. Yes,
DeSantis, despite the margin, still couldn't get as many votes as Trump got out of Florida.
And ironically, Robert, if you look at the age thing we're talking about right now, and I should get the Florida poll, at least the nomination poll, and put it up. In Florida, we ask people, look, if DeSantis isn't the guy, would you not vote? If Trump is the guy, would you not vote? There are twice the numbers of voters who say that if it is not Trump, I'm not voting in the state of Florida. And that's where DeSantis completely collapses and drops off. It happened in 2020, and you can compare it. Even though DeSantis won by such a big margin in 22, if you look at the exit polls, you'll see what I'm talking about and Robert's talking about. Trump did better with younger people even in 20. And now it's gotten even worse. I mean, literally, Trump is carrying
the New York
every
Times
single
just did a
age
big
group.
piece about how Trump improved amongst every single generational cohort from 2012 to 2020. Because 2012, Obama wins by 4. 2020, Biden wins by 4.
Yeah.
Yet Trump did better amongst every single generational cohort.
Yes.
The only reason Trump lost in 2020 putting aside for the moment the questionable 6 million extra ballots, according to the census, we can say that now on YouTube.
We're allowed to now. They took away my
now.
strikes, brother.
Yeah, exactly. But putting even that issue aside, what made the New York Times curious and Nate Cohn curious was like, how is the margin the same and yet Trump did better amongst every single generational group? Yep. It's because the silent generation dropped off dramatically as a share of the vote. And this is what Republicans are not getting in general. The problem in the suburbs is the generational
that guy right
shift.
There it is. Perfect example. 25 years old, male, 30 to 50, high school degree, never married. He's a Protestant, lives in the suburbs. I mean, Trump's just absolutely killing it in Miami, in the Gold Coast, Florida. I mean, just crushing it all the way up the coast. Oh, this is why, Robert, and I want, because you're the lawyer and I like to stay in my lane. So I do want to ask you to explain the indictment to people and what you think. But, you know, people always asking me, what do you think? Do you think they're going to indict him? And forever now, I've been saying they're going to indict him, because what Robert and I are trying to tell you folks is they're terrified. What he's breaking into, and I played that panel on CNN 2 months ago, and I said, get ready for the federal indictment, something designed to hurt him and then remove him from the ballot, because they knew it on that CNN panel. They were lamenting, how is he winning these younger voters? How did we lose so many of these Hispanics? Now even, you know, African-American, young African-Americans, this is the coalition Trump always claimed he had, but really didn't. And the truth is, it was always headed there. It just blew wide open now. They cannot beat him, Robert. They can't. It's not mathematically possible at this point. He's going to sweep every electoral college battleground state at this point. Everything's going to go. I was trying to explain to people, like, what does it mean when Harvard Harris tells you he's ahead by 7 points? What does it mean when ABC News, which Robert just told you, that was a Biden plus 14 final national? What does it mean when they're telling you Trump is up by 7? The Marquette poll never had Trump up by 5 nationally. And you can see it in the Marquette poll when you look at the third party and not vote choices. Trump, his floor doesn't fall like DeSantis' falls. DeSantis collapses into the 30s and then is trailing Biden by 1. That's the real ballad. You're either, you're not holding a gun to someone's head and saying, go to the polls. They won't show up. And what that poll and ours and all these others are showing you is that this man is winning a voters that Democrats cannot afford to lose. The underclass, Robert, we never had them ahead with the 30,000 and below. Those are the WIC and food stamp SNAP people. Your Zoomer millennial retail service,
that's working class crowd.
That's right? a big chunk of it.
The people on the very edges of the American economy. And it's just two different groups. He had already got the people that had kind of dropped out, the disabled, the unemployed, not looking for work. I think if you go back and look at one of your polls, you'll find that there was like a 20-point drop-off for DeSantis amongst that group, with a lot of that group saying they just wouldn't vote if it's not Trump. But he's added the other portion of this sort of abandoned working class, which is this younger voter, millennial, Zoomer, many of them African-American, many of them Mexican-American, Cuban, Venezuelan, Latino, even Puerto Rican.
Ricans now.
He made inroads into Puerto Rican precincts in New York and Orlando and other parts of the country. And that's the group that Biden knows that only Trump gets. And the problem is that's the kind of group that not only rallies to someone under pressure from the system, but they relate. This is the point I was trying to make. Trump, by being indicted so many times, has become relatable to the working class outsider populations. So to minority populations, to women, to other groups that he wasn't before. He was always, uber macho. So he always had a huge gender gap in his approval and his appeal. But that's even changed by him becoming the guy the whole system's trying to crush. They really did Trump a political favor. They don't know that. They don't understand that. But they did. It's because they don't know their history. They don't understand what's happening with these voter groups. They don't understand why they're moving the way they do. And this also, bridges into the next topic, which is Trump. This is only going to surge for Trump because the economy is about to really tank. Now, to me,
Yeah,
to me, a recession is whenever voters say they're in a recession. I don't care what the GDP, GDI, Other numbers are when voters say they're in a recession, politically speaking, that's a recession economically.
Yes, sir.
Because they see it as such. That's where it's consequential. But they're about to get a severe recession. What's Trump's number one? Where does he have the biggest edge over Biden, the biggest edge over DeSantis, the biggest edge over all his competitors? The economy. And a lot of these voters are already thinking, you know what? For all the other crap, when Trump was in there, we got jobs. When Trump was in there, wages were going up. When Trump was in there, the economy was doing better. The housing was more affordable. Let's put that guy back in there because at least I'll have a job. This will be one of the first common things you'll hear, particularly from working class minority supporters of Trump. It was the same thing that you heard over the weekend. Not only, now he's one of us, by the way, in which he's being attacked and they're trying to imprison him. But also they were saying, with Trump, I had a job. With Trump brings jobs. So what happens when the economy faces a worse economy than 2007, 2008?
Grover Cleveland. Told you. Yeah. Grover. And
exactly.
Matthew,
and landslide kind of margins.
Yeah, a landslide. That's what. And to Matthew, he said, should Trump do rallies in inner city St. Louis, Memphis, Atlanta, Chicago, Detroit, Houston, Philadelphia? I mean,
well, I think he should do tours. I think both he and Robert. I think Robert Kennedy should retrace his father's steps, tour the Mississippi Delta, tour the Appalachia, tour the Native American reservations, tour the ghettos in Harlem and Watts, tour the barrios in East LA. And Trump should do the same.
Yeah.
To show his relatedness to those communities, to be on a listening tour, to show a different side of his personality. That this is a group that's about to get really hammered.
That's what I'm trying to. I think it was Friday, or it was it was Friday. I was trying on my little Friday show rant. I was explaining to people like, not only will these voters not vote for Ron DeSantis or Mike Pence or whatever, if this plan of theirs succeeds, they're going to hate the Republican Party for a generation. And I also think, Matthew, that he should, more like what Robert said, the rallies are great. And I know a lot of people love the rallies, but the fact of the matter is he's much better in these personal level meetings. I've seen it with my own eyes.
When he stops by randomly the Walmart or the Waffle Houses or the places or all those things, when he goes back and makes something in the kitchen, like he did with Undercover Boss years ago.
It's real with him. It's real.
It is. And you can see he likes being around people, right? It's a place where he has a huge edge over Biden because Biden's a derelict and they can't let him out in public very often.
Dude, our last poll was Biden. Let me hold on and address this nonsense. We did again, but dude, your candidate should be going around and trying to earn voters instead of trolling people and paying bots to troll people. The last poll we did in 2020 was Biden +4. We got the Electoral College almost completely perfect and overestimated Biden in Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. So I don't know what the hell you're talking about. Go earn a vote and stop getting your ass kicked and waiting for the former president to be jailed.
That you see on the social media sites on the DeSantis supporters.
What a stupid strategy.
Just to go around and troll Trump supporters and try to defame Trump supporters is counterproductive. It's not going to achieve anything. It antagonizes voices that otherwise wouldn't be antagonized or talk on the topic. And for those that, in terms of betting history, I've only had one unsuccessful betting election. That was 2022. 2020 was still profitable because Florida went the way they had the margins. Ohio had the margins. Iowa had the margins. But for those that didn't watch back then, that have only heard different versions of it, my view was very simple. I actually called Trump getting 74 to 75 million votes. I mean, I was one of the only people that do that. I didn't think they would be able to get the last 5-6 million mail-in ballots because they weren't in at the time on election day. They didn't come in until election night. They stole it. Hey, congratulations.
4 days later. And 4 days later.
You can respect a crook even if they're a crook.
And in 22, frankly, Robert, in 22,
some of that happened.
Now all of this stuff is coming out.
In Nevada. It didn't happen as much in Georgia. Like you look at what's interesting is you look at where there were some election law reforms, the turnout numbers did not go off the charts. Yeah. Where there weren't reforms, Michigan, Nevada, Arizona, Pennsylvania, that's where the numbers went back off the charts again with these crazy turnouts we've never seen before. So there's
And
always that risk of the turnout function. The point is that Trump's margins, two things, back to 2020, I simply thought they wouldn't be able to steal that many ballots. They did because they weren't in yet. Even Democrats were saying they needed to get those ballots in before Election Day, not gamble on being able to sneak them in through the back door. They got a little lucky in that regard, quite frankly. That was a big gamble, and they only had to take the gamble because they were wrong about Trump's Election Day vote.
How much Election Day vote he was going to get.
Exactly. Yeah. And my assumption was that the turnout edge would favor Trump on Election Day. It did. I nailed those numbers. The Biden's own people got those numbers wrong. The media got them wrong. So that was issue one. And then issue
everybody
two,
did. Nobody knew he was going to pull that off. I mean,
the big question in the whole election, which I talked about on the podcast with in 2020 with Kelly in Vegas and John Murray when they were doing it from an election betting perspective, when they said that this election 2020 had one big question mark: could they use mail-in voting to substitute for lack of enthusiasm?
Yep.
Because the enthusiasm gap so favored Trump that was going to give Trump a huge edge. And right now, at least in the tracking at the time when I was talking to them, they hadn't been able to substitute for it. They were still running short. They pulled it out on election night. It is what it is. But that was and then in terms of the polling, Richard's polling was always consistent. And my argument was, I think that we'll win the turnout battle. So that will be just enough to put Trump over the top. And
it's so close. It was always so close.
It was all close. But your polls were the only polls showing it close. Well, I mean, they were showing 17 points in Wisconsin, ABC for Biden.
Biden.
They were showing massive Biden. People forget the median bet on election night. One of the other big bets I won was that Biden would win the national vote by 8.5 points.
Yeah.
They weren't even close.
Yeah.
So they had these margins, as they said, Michigan wasn't going to be close, Pennsylvania wasn't going to be close. They said Ohio was going to go Biden. They said Iowa might go Biden.
Quinnipiac and the New York Times, they fueled that nonsense.
They said Texas might go Biden. Remember?
Florida,
North Carolina, Florida would go Biden. Yeah,
remember?
All these states. I won bets in every single one of those states. I won bets on the margin. I won bets on the win. I won bets on all of it. So the key was they stole just enough votes in Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Arizona, Nevada, and Georgia.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
And in Wisconsin, Robert.
But the idea that your poll was showing Biden slightly ahead in many of these places so that we had to win the turnout battle. We didn't because of how they got the mail-in ballots in. But people that are trying to re-script the 2020 story,
unbelievable,
in just crazy ways.
That's another.
In 2022, everything was close. And the bottom line is that the working class I was reminded once again in 2022, the only election I've really got wrong in my entire betting life was 2022. And that was because I forgot that these working class independent voters won't vote generic Republican. Number one. Number two, I underestimated that the generational shift amongst the professional managerial suburban group of voters is why Republicans are losing there. Like there was this real belief amongst the conventional Republican analysts that the suburban voter was so anti-woke that they loved being anti-woke, that they were going to turn out in Philly and Detroit suburbs and Oakland County, that they were going to be voting straight Republican. Didn't happen. And it didn't happen because there's been a generational shift. You go back and look, who was giving Romney those cultural conservative margins? It was the silent generation, the greatest generation, which is now mostly dead. The millennial generation, he didn't win at all, suburban, upscale, or otherwise. And now that's the majority of these suburbs in Atlanta, in outside parts of Texas, outside parts of Phoenix, outside parts of Reno, all these different places that Republicans didn't win back at all, running conventional campaigns. That's what I misgauged, but your polling wasn't inaccurate in any of these places. So it's people who just didn't watch in live time. But it should be a reminder. What's amazing is these people blaming Trump now for 2022. No, it's because we didn't have Trump that we got crushed in 2022.
That's right.
Wake up to the message. I mean, it's amazing how they can misread the poll numbers.
Totally backwards.
The Wisconsin Supreme Court justice who refused to campaign with Trump got crushed, including in the suburbs in Wisconsin. There is no big anti-woke majority in these suburbs because they're upper middle class millennials who believe in woke. They're not anti-woke. And so consequently, that woke, anti-woke is not going to get you an elected president. It's not going to get you a Senate or House majority with any consistency. What's going to get it is getting the Trump working class populist voter to come to the vote. Because when they come and vote, as you pointed out for a long time, Trump adds a lot more to the Republican ticket than the Republican ticket has ever added to Trump.
Hands down. And by the way, I'm showing this right now. Like, I'm showing the difference and I know that the colors were different with Kelly, but this is Kelly, who Robert just referenced. He got absolutely crushed, even in the suburbs, even in Waukesha, even in Racine, even in Kenosha. He did not get margins he needed. He barely held on to Kenosha. Barely. In Brown, he didn't even hold on to the suburbs around Green Bay, all those areas. And then he got killed in lumberjack country. And when you compare that to Trump, it looks like Reagan's map. Here's Reagan in 84. And Reagan even did worse in lumberjack country, all except for one county, than Trump did. And here's Trump versus Romney and traditional Republicans. You can even see, I mean, he lost Romney like Kelly and like all these other Republicans statewide, except for Ron Johnson, which shouldn't surprise anyone. They lost Door County. Sauk, Trump held on. So, this is it's so obvious. That NBC News article, it really showed, and there was actually a good piece on RCP. Unsurprisingly, Sean did not write it. He used to be the one who wrote these kinds of pieces, but he doesn't anymore. It had nothing to do with Donald Trump. It had everything to do with Republicans not understanding the infrastructure game and relying too much on cheap paid people on the ground that aren't. Look, Democrats have true believers and volunteers.
They ran on crime. That was the Supreme Court conservative campaign. And that's because these people, like Jesse Kelly, are living in tiny little political bubbles of their own.
Yeah.
They're living in the Daily Wire world.
They are.
We have Jordan Peterson saying he thinks Mike Pence is a good candidate, right?
Did you read Harry Anthony?
Brain on the Daily Wire was my joke at the time. But these are people who don't understand. They lost the culture war amongst the professional class with millennials.
Yeah.
That voter group isn't coming back. That isn't who Trump is getting back. Trump is getting working class millennials, working class Zoomers. And these are people who aren't interested in the generic Republican brand, that the woke issues don't move them that much.
Yeah.
Not to where they're going to vote straight Republican or even vote at all. The economy is going to be their big issue, and being an outsider and changing the system is going to be their second issue. Ron Johnson was able to stay as an outsider because of his anti-vaccine Pfizer vaccine campaign. And the second advantage was Wisconsin didn't have all those illegal votes it had in 2020. So that's how Ron Johnson wins. If the 2022 rules were in place in 2020, Trump wins Wisconsin easily, by a point.
Oh, yeah. And by the way, in the Wisconsin poll that we did, we had the electorate D+3. That's the only reason why we had Biden up by about 2 points. It turned out to be R+1. So in truth, that the polling showed you what happened.
Given what we're talking about, given all these other issues, and given that increasingly, I think that he'll do fine in Georgia because they've changed the election rules there. That he'll do fine in Wisconsin because the rules of even losing the Wisconsin Supreme Court, I don't think they're going to be able to go back and they're not going to try what they did in 2020 exactly. So I think it comes down to Arizona and Nevada if it gets to be close again in 2024.
If it gets to be close.
So interestingly enough, from with all these indictments, with seeing how Pence behaved, looking at it from a vice presidential perspective, and you add Arizona may be a tight space, I'm increasingly inclined to think Kari Lake would be his best VP.
I knew you were going there. Listen, for me, I've been narrowing this down, like who could actually help. And for me, it really is all about Georgia, Arizona, Nevada. I actually think he's going to take, which is stunning for people who've been following me forever.
And
because
it's all schmucks in Georgia. Kemp is such a schmuck. You can't trust anybody in the Georgia political establishment.
No.
So I think that there's nowhere. There's Lombardo. I don't
Laker
think
Johnson
Lombardo.
At this point,
also, Lombardo. There's so many skeletons there. You really don't want to stick him on.
But he's doing stuff though for election reforms. He really is pushing.
Oh yeah, and I think he'll be a fine governor. It's just I wouldn't want to. He's risky to stick on the ticket. Because of there's a lot of issues there. Without going into too many details. I mean, he wouldn't be a bad choice. But my view is pick a vice president who can't. Number one, who is insurance, is Spiro Agnew style insurance. Because I want to talk about something else I've increasingly recognized that Biden's secretly a political genius about. But the
I can't wait to hear this.
Yeah, but Trump needs to pick somebody who's insurance. Anybody who the deep state thinks will be good for them puts Trump at imminent risk of removal by one means or another.
That's right.
And so I think he saw what Pence did to him. I mean, we were talking about it during his administration, that Pence was undermining him all along, and that Pence's people were undermining him all along.
Constantly leaking.
So he needs somebody that's inside, that the deep state is as equally afraid of as him, that the Democratic Party is as equally afraid of as him. And I think that's number one, needs to be someone the deep state doesn't trust at all. Number two, it needs to be someone who, in my view, the best thing a vice president does is campaign for you. I mean, to me, this will probably surprise some people out there, but the best vice presidential pick, other than Al Gore in 1992, because it gave Clinton great branding edge, two Southerners, see this is a new Democratic Party, etc. The next best vice presidential pick, in my view, was Sarah Palin in 2008, because I think John McCain would have lost by double digits.
Yeah, he would.
But the moment Palin announced, she brought a lot of that populist part of the base back, and she was, for whatever her weaknesses, she was a fantastic campaigner. She got not Trump size, but Trump-like rallies. People would come out for drill baby drills. She knew how to do the basic rhetoric. So you want someone who's good on the stump, who you can say, you know what, if I send them out, they're going to get a big crowd. Pence never even got big crowds.
No,
that they can also get big crowds. They can also dominate the news cycle in the local community.
And handle the media. And handle the media.
And exactly, handle the press. That's the only thing Sarah Palin couldn't do well. That, have someone that can also handle the press well, a hostile press. And then third, that can help you in a particular state. I'm not, a state where that person's already well liked. And there's right now, there's only one person who fits all three, and that is Carrie Lake. She helps in Arizona, a state that's a key state. She knows that state like the back of her hand. She's putting together a political get out the vote machine there for 2024. She's uniquely charismatic, very good on the stage, and exceptional with the media. She's arguably, in some cases, better than Trump is in direct interactions with the media. She doesn't get trapped as easily as Trump sometimes does.
Yeah.
And the deep state would be terrified of her because of various positions. They would never want to take out Trump to make her the president. So in the past, not being an elected official would be a big deal, but I don't think it is anymore. I think I think Trump has broken that barrier. So I kind of like increasingly Carrie Lake for consideration for Trump's vice president. Also, the people that surround her are populist people. She wouldn't be undermining him. Now, this goes to my theory of why Joe Biden is secretly a political genius.
Yeah, let's hear it. Let's hear it.
Increasingly, it dawned on me is like, why is Biden still in? Why hasn't there been pressure on him to resign? Why haven't they escalated the criminal charges with an extortionate threat that if he doesn't do it, he's going to go down? Why does Biden have the confidence that he can indict his political opponent? And it really all comes down to one thing. His vice president's not going anywhere, and everybody hates her.
Yeah.
That she can't win. As you look at why is the deep state stuck with Dementia Joe? Well, doing weekend at Biden's for the next year. It's because they can't replace him with Kamala. And I remember at the time we talked about it was such a weird choice for Biden to pick someone that had attacked him, called him a racist. Chris Dodd, his old buddy, his old drinking buddy, didn't want him to do it. And now I think, you know what? He knew, he was like, this chick is even more unpopular than I am. Iowa hates her more than they hate me. New Hampshire hates her more than they hate me. Washington's going to hate her more because all of her staff hate her more than they hate me. So he's like, this is genius. As long as I have my own Spiro Agnew, because of how dumb she is, they can never replace me. They might want to indict me. They might want to indict my son. They might want to indict my family. They might want to force me to resign. They might know that I'm losing my mind, but they can't because Kamala Harris is so hated that she will lose the election guaranteed. And she's so politically ambitious, they'll never get her out of the vice presidential position. So it might not have just been her other skills that Joe made her vice president for.
This is making sense to me. It is, because for a long time people were thinking, she's going to be so popular. And I remember Nate Silver's article about how well she would do in the Rust Belt. It was just insane stuff.
Yeah, she had to drop out. She was a deep state favorite Big
From the
money.
beginning.
She had to drop out before Iowa because she was going to get less than 1%.
Yep. And that's exactly right. And she never even got to a vote. And he got to look like a, progressive hero by appointing the first
He picked the one
woman
black
of
woman, like
color.
Susan Rice would have made a lot more sense. He
Yeah.
picked the one black woman who was so politically hated
Yeah.
that the Democratic Party wouldn't challenge it because
They'll
she was a
never
black
get
woman,
They'll
but
never
nobody
get
else could do anything about him in the future because everybody hates her more.
Robert's got it. He figured this out. This is true. This makes sense to me. It totally makes sense. And she can't, even if there are whispers of, man, this guy's, falling all over stages and stuff.
And she would love to
tripping
get
over
rid of him.
sandbags.
But everybody's like, you pull 5 points worse than everybody.
She does.
Her whole
She's down to
staff hates her
comfort.
and leaks to Politico every other week how they hate working for Kamala Harris.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah,
crushed.
it's
She's getting crushed by double digits.
but there's no way she ain't going nowhere. She didn't hang around this whole time not to be president. So that's the problem the system has. They can't get her out, which means they can't get Biden out. That's why they're stuck with
which I got to ask you about. I mean, the very day that Republicans, or the day after, Republicans go into a skiff when someone like Nancy Mace is calling Joe Biden a despot, and she walks into a skiff, looks at papers that the FBI has been trying to hide from them. This is not a bomb thrower. Nancy Mace, they tried to primary her, and Charleston saved her. But basically, she has been with Trump when she's with him. She has been against him when she's against him. She didn't vote to impeach him, and she did. She was smart on certain fronts. But look, she's not a MAGA bomb thrower. She's not even MAGA. And when she goes and on War Room to tell War Room's viewers that I just saw evidence Joe Biden took a $5 million bribe and now they're indicting the president, this is a major problem. So this indictment, if you could explain to people, first of all, what it is. And then I just can't believe Jonathan Turley's take. Like, for me, I'm not a lawyer, but for me, this is about voter sovereignty, Robert.
He got one thing right. I was thinking this through as to why Biden would go through with it. I was like, okay, part of it I get. He thinks the indictment will hurt Trump, and Trump's the one guy who can defeat him. But then as I game plan this out, I realized the other reason Biden did it. What do you think the Biden end game is potentially on a Trump indictment? Why could it work to Biden's benefit?
Well, if Trump gets away with it, and then Biden, or are you saying, like, if not gets away with it, if Trump is released by the Supreme Court because the Supreme Court
assume
rules,
that at the end of the game there's a pardon. Who is it that pardons Trump?
Yeah, I get you.
It's going to be Biden.
It's going to be Biden
because it's perfect cover, right? So he knows it's his insurance deal. If he gets into trouble, he's already in trouble
because he's in the same kind of trouble. IBD tip, by the way, in their poll today, that was released today. I got to give them credit because they have, of course, had to bring up to voters about Trump's indictment, but they also brought up Biden's issues. And, it's amazing. It looked like people, because, the bottom line is here, Biden isn't squeaky clean. He's corrupt. He's been corrupt for a long time.
He's been corrupt forever. That's an open secret in D.C.
Yeah, it's not even a secret. I can't believe that we're here and we were in the space we were in 2020, painting this guy as some decent guy.
When he was vice president, he put it out through his lobbyists and other people that for a certain payment, he could get the Obama Justice Department to drop any criminal case against anybody.
That's right.
I know it because his people made the pitch to one of my clients. So, I mean, this was not a secret in Washington. I remember being shocked at the brazenness of it, but it was still striking. But then it was like the one thing he's understood how the criminal justice system works. I was like, why is he not worried about the end game of him indicting Trump? Why isn't he worried about him next being indicted? Well, why, about setting this perilous precedent? And that's like, when I was game planning it out, the most logical thing is after the election, he pardons Trump, and he does it as we need to come together as a country. I'm just going to pardon everybody who's in politics. And, it happens to include my family, just coincidentally. Happens to include me. But I'm really doing this for Donald Trump in America.
My son. But I'm doing this to unify all of us, okay?
Exactly. He can pitch it as unification. How do you get away with pardoning your family and yourself? You do it as you do it by the headline not being you being pardoned, The headline being Trump being pardoned.
And
for that, you want a few more criminal charges brought against Trump. Helps you in the campaign, you think. He's mistaken about that,
yeah,
but you
he's
think.
wrong,
But
yeah.
even if but he's got an insurance package so that before he's out, he's not worried about ever being indicted because they can't take him out before the election because of Kamala Harris. And if they got the idea of taking him out after the election, that's when he steps in, pardons himself, pardons his kids, pardons his family, probably pardons everybody connected to the Durham report. So the deep state can't object either. They would like to take Trump out with this precedent that they're trying to establish as we'll bridge into the legal discussion.
This takes away, and everyone needs to understand this. The deep state does want this to go forward because they want the sovereignty, folks. This is about voter sovereignty, whether the administrative state or your duly elected president is the one who, A, gets to call the shots on what is and what isn't a secret in this country. Secrecy is the greatest threat to liberty, period. End of story. And they want, and this is how I actually think, how many cases of voir dire, how many cases have we done voir dire for over the years? I'm telling you, the only way to get people a jury, if this was to go to a jury, is to give them something that supersedes their own ideology and their own belief about a man, an individual man. You have to make this about voter sovereignty. The only question in this case is whether the administrative state or you has the authority to elect. Do they select or do you elect a president? That's the story. If this, listen, it's amazing. I may have to state the obvious, but I have to state the obvious. If the Trump defense team doesn't know this, then I'm going to have to say this out loud. This is the question you have to ask the jury. Not all the legalese nonsense they're going to try to use the Espionage Act to get you because the Presidential Records Act isn't a criminal statute. They're going to try to weave this crazy legal theory, and a jury will buy it if you don't make it. If you make it about you, if you make it about them, they will not buy it because that is really what they want a jury to do, Robert. Actually, they want to just bully you in a plea deal. That's all feds do. But if it goes to a jury, their conviction rates are extremely high. In case people don't know this, they get almost every conviction. Vince McMahon is like one of the only ones to get a not guilty in that court in a decade. I mean, they don't lose. You have to ask the jury whether they're prepared to give up the sovereignty that comes with being an American voter just to convict Donald Trump. So do you hate Donald Trump more than you enjoy your liberty? And that's the question, because that's really what this comes down to. If this is successful, Robert, then all we'll have moving forward, first of all, nobody like Trump will ever come along again, because why would it, right? Why would you get destroyed, your financial life in ruins, your reputation, and even lose your liberty, just to try to do something good for the American people? They're not going to do it anymore. People will be chilled out, and all we'll ever have is this list of state-approved candidates that we can vote for. That's it. So, and I can't tell you, how many voters over the weekend, donors over the weekend, it does seem like they get this because, Robert, we heard a lot of the only way to stop this march towards despotism is Trump or bust, total victory for Trump, because anyone else wins, we lose. And that's the way this is. That's in their minds. And I'm talking about even donors who hedge their bets and donate to different candidates. One of them just had Nikki Haley in their house the other day. They're hedging their bets because that's how rich people work. But they themselves feel like, well, I could be next, man. I could be next. And, it sends the wrong message. If you allow, and that's the question for me with voters, will they allow that? I don't think they're going to, after all the reasons we just talked about. But can you explain to people what it is here with this case? And then ultimately, because I watched your interview with Viva after you did Bourbon, and I can't agree more. I'm not a lawyer, but I can't agree more with you on your take, because again, this is about whether you have the right to have an elected leader decide everything for you, not just what's secret, what's not secret. This is about your ability to select a leader who oversees the executive branch. If they get him, it means that you don't have that anymore. They are now in charge because they are above the president. And that's the president is as the people, our only representative in the executive branch. That's it. And he's supposed to be the boss. If they can decide what's classified or what he's allowed to keep or not allowed to keep, then that's it, folks. That's the game.
Right.
It's over. The show is over. Go home, barricade the door, because you don't live in a free country anymore. Your children, you just brought them into an authoritarian world. They're going to run roughshod all over us. This is going to be listen, human beings do horrible things to each other. This is what makes this country exceptional. Nothing else. Our ideas. And if you allow them to take that from us, we're screwed. We're all screwed. And it's time for those of you who are still asleep to wake the up, because that's what's at stake here. Go ahead, though. I'll throw it to you.
Yeah, exactly. So whenever you see anybody out there talking about these are the government's documents, ask yourself, who is the government?
That's right.
The government in the executive branch is the elected president. That's right. It. And it's people who work for him, who get their power through him. They do not have power above him. The legislature, Congress cannot pass laws that limit his executive authority, or the Article 2 no longer exist in the Constitution, because Article 2 vests all executive power in the elected president. End of story. Not any executive power, all executive power. And it doesn't give any executive power to the legislative branch. It doesn't give any executive power to the judicial branch. It doesn't give any executive power to unelected officials beneath the president.
Right.
The president alone is the personification under the Constitution of all executive power.
Amen.
So he determines what is his record, a public record, a presidential record, or a personal record. He determines what is national security information and what isn't. He determines what is classified and what isn't. He determines who it's shared with and who it isn't. And that decision is non-reviewable by the people underneath him, by the people in the Justice Department, who are also technically underneath him while he's president, but are still underneath the president later. Also, the Congress can't restrict it. The courts can't restrict it. So that has to be reposed in the president. What they are proposing is that there's a government in the executive branch other than the elected head of the executive branch.
Yep.
They're trying to use this precedent to say the people who are the government is the deep state, the administrative state, the bureaucratic state, the national security, military, industrial complex. And we know that because Jack Smith, when he gave the indictment announcement of it, said this was for who? The men and women of the intelligence community. Our Constitution doesn't say anything about giving any power to the men and women of the intelligence community. So what they're trying to do is establish this precedent that the deep state governs the executive branch, not the American people, not the elected head of it. They're going further and trying to strip you and dilute your ability to vote for that elected president in 2024 by bringing these indictments. So it's a parallel twin attack on the elected president and on the power of the voters and the people and on the constitutional framework to allow the deep state to have exclusive monopoly on what is and isn't national security, what is and isn't classified, what is and isn't a presidential or personal or public record for the purposes of the law. And it's important to note, the indictment doesn't allege that Trump kept things at a later point that he wasn't supposed to. They say that Trump was not even allowed to take with him copies of documents from his own administration if that concerned national security. And this is what Edward Snowden has been warning about. This is what Julian Assange has been warning about, which is they're using secrets to seize power, to wage war. What is the beginning of the indictment about? It's about General Milley lying to Bob Woodward, claiming that he stopped Trump from going into war with Iran, when the truth was exactly the opposite. Milley tried to get Trump to go into war in Iran, and Trump refused. So we see the power of secrets. If we allow a secret government to exist, and that's what this would be, a secret government empowered by secrets with a monopoly on secrets, such that they can put the elected president in prison if he discloses their nefarious war whoring secrets. That's how insane this case is. It goes way past and beyond Trump. And it's why it's so dangerous. I say this case isn't United States of America versus Donald Trump. It's deep state versus democracy. It's deep state versus constitutional government.
That's bottom line for me. That's it. For me, the bottom line is that, and I think it was Tyser in the chat. He's right. They've been at this for years, but this is why during the Trump administration, that acceleration I saw of, it's important that Robert Mueller be independent. He's not subjected to Trump. Trump can't fire him if he wanted to. This was all crazy. The founding fathers never envisioned any part of the executive branch being independent. The Justice Department can take that and stick it up their ass. The boss of the executive branch is the elected president. They are
and the Supreme Court repeatedly rules this. They've said when any part of the executive branch is independent from the president's power, it's unconstitutional.
It's unconstitutional. End of story. I mean, we're reading in the book club, Ideological Origins of the American Revolution. It's so clear what they would say in this situation. Like, who the hell do you think you are? That's what they would say. Who the hell do you think you are? The voter is and that was what was so.
The voter is sovereign, and the president is the voter's expression is sovereign.
That's right.
Everybody else works for them.
Damn right.
They're trying to reverse that, so we all work for them.
And they've been used to getting away with it in practical,
really since the end of World War II.
That's right.
And when John Kennedy stood up, they killed him. When Robert Kennedy stood up, they killed him.
That's right. And I'm telling you, their choice.
They're trying to politically assassinate Donald Trump.
Looking at these numbers, they're fighting for their life. They're the way that things are right now. They know he's been through it one time, and he knows how this is going to work if he's elected again. So they're feeling literally at risk of being, politically exterminated. They know, like you said before, there's a whole article in Politico about it. Biden's people don't think anybody can beat Biden but Donald Trump. Let me just be real clear about that. Nobody is scared of Mike Pence. Nobody is scared of Ron DeSantis. They throw that stuff out there.
And Ann Coulter and these people that are living off their personal grievances, pretending that this is actually a super secret strategy to help Trump get the nomination because they think it's easier against Trump. They're living in a delusional world. They're living in a completely delusional world.
Dude, I gotta be honest. I can't even respond to Pedro anymore. It's ridiculous. Like, dude, were you like last night again with this nonsense and these smears? Last night, dude, weren't you just a few weeks ago talking about how Donald Trump made up that he was going to be indicted to raise money? So, like, you're not credible. Just shut up.
They just lost their mind. Justin Hart, all these people have lost their mind.
Get a grip. It's not about you.
Yeah,
it's not about Donald Trump.
This is about the dangerous utility of the deep state. I mean, to his credit, Mike Cernovich, who has been a critic of Trump since 2018, was a big Trump fan in 2016, completely flipped himself and said that this is clearly a situation that's changed. And he's like, if this indictment's allowed to go forward, if we allow them to remove Trump from electoral competitiveness because of this, we have empowered the deep state forever. And he goes, everybody's got to rally behind Trump now. So he understands it. Jack Posobiec and others understand it within the populist community. This is the only choice is to rally behind Trump because the ultimate verdict on this indictment will be Election Day, November 2024.
Yeah, and people are talking about it in the chat right now. I'm telling you from my standpoint, from what I do, I'm looking at these numbers. They cannot beat him. They can't beat him. Something would have to dramatically change. A lot of people that are on someone else's camp but Trump will say, this isn't 2016. And then they'll point to 2020 to try to argue.
How many of those people do you think, I go back and forth, how many of these people are just grifting for a paycheck? Because as long as they can get donors to write checks for a lot of these people, they get paid no matter what dumb stuff they spew to people. Because, I mean, what most people don't know is almost everybody who works in the campaign space is not contingency based. That they get paid whether a candidate wins or loses.
That's right.
All they care about is whether a candidate can raise money. And they're often convince people to run for things they can't win because all they care about is that gets them cash in their pocket. And I've been going back and forth on how many of the DeSimps, there's some that, have their own TDS victim, mindset. Something about Trump sent them off in such a way that they can't get back to normalcy. But some of these others are looking like pure grifters at this point. And especially as you see, like if I was on their camp, one, I'd be giving very different advice. Well, I tell him not to run, but even if he was
That's
running,
what I told the reporter from USA Today. He asked me what I thought, Robert, which is very clear, by the way, what I thought from my poll if I was advising DeSantis, what would I tell him to do? And I'm like, first of all, it's not my job to respond to that and give a candidate campaign advice. I'm a pollster. That's number one. I'm not with anybody's camp, so I'm not going to do that. That's number one. Number two, let's play your little game. If I was advising the governor in any capacity, I would have been apparently the only one who told him not to go on this suicide mission. Because as you can clearly see in Florida, now even 20% of the Republican Party can't stand him. Can't stand him.
And his negatives are only going to go up.
Just going to keep going, man. Yeah. Just going to keep going.
He permanently, I called it a kamikaze campaign. He's permanently ended his presidential future. Now, if I were him, if someone came to, if you're Ron DeSantis, you got young kids, you're not independently wealthy, and Murdoch comes to you and says, look, you have no downside here. So your safety net is, okay, maybe you won't be president in the future if this all goes south. But you're financially set for life. $10 million up front, guaranteed. I can see why he might take that. Now, I think he's convinced himself he can win, and I think definitely his wife's convinced herself she can win. I mean, these are people, like, she goes around thinking that I'd said it was a good idea to have her out there. I wouldn't have her out there like she's Hillary, which is what they're doing now. Use her behind the scenes in person. That's where she's really good. I wouldn't necessarily have her too much in the public profile. But they think that, Florida, where woke comes to die with a gator leather jacket, is like, folks, this is like nerd school. Okay. This is like what happens when prep school kids go to nerd school. I mean, this is not cool. This is not hip. This is not, Melania-esque. Sorry. It's disconnected, from reality in terms of how they're campaigning. And I think, but yeah, he's, on the upside for him, he's financially set for life now, from what I've heard. But he's killed his political future, and he could have been the vice president on the vice presidential ticket, and he would have been a lock for 2028. And now he will never be president. That's really done. Anybody who's investing their time and effort in DeSantis, not for money, but because they think DeSantis has a political future, you're wasting your time. You're just wasting your time. Move on. Don't waste your time any further. It is a dead campaign. It is dead in the water.
I got to tell you, Mark Levin, and I still have some of these clips. I could play them, but I'm showing people Florida right now because, it's like it really is amazing. One of the other question was, why am I polling Florida when there are so many other states on the schedule? And my response to that was very simple. Let's look at the schedule. If he can't win his own home state, right? Both candidates are declaring that Florida is their home state. You can't win a nomination if you can't carry your own home state. The Iowa caucuses will be first, we know. New Hampshire, Trump's going to win it. Nevada's caucus, Trump's going to win it. South Carolina, Trump's going to win it. Anywhere in the South, Alabama, Arkansas, all those, Trump is going to win. He's going to win the main primary. They had this plan in California. They still do. But the PPIC poll that just came out must be having them flip their you-know-what, because Trump's at 50. And that plan they have to win, even if they lose the plurality to Trump, they could still get more delegates based on them being allocated the way they are in California by congressional district. But that's not true if a candidate wins 50. Then if Trump takes 50%, he will take every delegate in the state. So that leaves Florida, because Tennessee, Texas, Massachusetts, Trump has a 45-point lead right now. That's not going away. North Carolina is going to go for Trump. I just pulled that. That'll be soon, by the way, guys. Texas, we polled not long ago. He's got a huge lead in Texas. He's even got a lead in Virginia. The poll just came out last week. He's got a huge lead in Virginia, which from my national poll, I actually got quite a few responses from Virginia, pretty diverse. And I'm not surprised by that result. Trump was dominating. So that leaves Florida. And I'm thinking, it will be, and this is what I told him, at this point, Florida, he's still in the race, will be his last stand. If you look at it by region, I got to show you this. I mean, this is just incredible. Where is the crosstab again? Why can't I find it? Okay, here we go. If you look by region, the Panhandle in the north is one of the closest, but it's not the closest. The closest is Orlando and Central Atlantic. Trump leads in the Panama City area, Bay County, where that's like the biggest Republican county in the Panhandle. He leads from basically Liberty to Escambia, and most of it coming from Panama City. Whereas DeSantis leads in Gadsden and Leon, which is where the capital, right, is Tallahassee. That's where he has most of his support. And you can see that here. And see, by the way, you go to Miami, really zoom in and read these interviews. Look, I mean, I think it's the coolest thing in the world. And Data Rapper just finished our own theme. So that's why you see it. It's got our unique font in it. It's got Big Data Poll's custom font. It's dope. And you can hover over them and you can see everything about that interview, Robert, like everything. So like, here's Trump, male, 58, certain to vote. He's white, conservative, identifies as an America First Republican, which, by the way, was dominant in the Republican primary. But this is where DeSantis leads, and he does have some panhandle support, but it's not in the traditional Republican areas, which is a little bit surprising. Jacksonville surprised me. Trump really did much better there than I expected. Orlando, they're both basically tied. The Orlando Central Atlantic, 43.2 for Donald Trump, 42.5 for Ron DeSantis. That's the closest Ron DeSantis gets around the state. And, he has some, like in some of the traditionalist Republican areas, he's got some support. But among the non-white, which again, for people who don't believe me, they're like, oh, his poll is way too non-white. Dude, the Republican Party in Florida has gotten so much more non-white in the last 10 years. Even in 2015, Robert, it was 16% Hispanic. In the Florida primary, the Republican primary in 16, it's going to be 20 to 21% Hispanic now. And that's where Trump really just starts to crush it. In the Tampa area, he leads because of all those working class North transplants that you and I have been talking about. 54.3 to 29.7, but the Gulf Coast Mid-Atlantic, 56.5 to 29.5, which surprised me because I thought DeSantis would be like doing well with the Monroe and Collier older Republicans, that kind of, but he's not doing as well there as I expected. And then the Miami, Gold Coast, all the way up, Robert, look at that. Just look at that. It's just totally dominant. And that the Hispanic number is what is fueling it, because by race alone, folks, Trump leads 51 to 35 with whites. He leads 63 to 25 with Hispanics, who, by the way, 80+% say they're America First. And he leads with blacks 3-1, or 2-1, but there's a lot of undecideds, and they'll go to Trump. And then Ron DeSantis is only carrying Asians. That's it. But really, to me, man, and by the way, there is a Hispanic detail, people, if you want to check it out. Cubans, 70 to 20. Puerto Ricans, 63 to 37. And all others 51 to 22.
Well, the other problem with DeSantis is the Republican Party has so changed.
It's so
in other words, if this was 2012 and there were a bunch of boomer, silent generation, professional managerial class, dominant Republican primaries, and your working class younger voter, your working class older white voter was still independent or the Democratic primary and not voting Republican primary, then this would be a much more competitive election. But, this has now gone from evenly split working class, upper middle class Republican primary in a lot of the primaries in 2012 to now 2-1 working class Republican Party.
Yeah.
And as your polls have shown, as every poll has shown amongst non-college voters, whether they're Hispanic, whether they're black, whether they're white, Trump's crushing DeSantis by as much as 60 points in some of these surveys. And this showed up, by the way, in Wisconsin. The one of the Democratic pollsters polled there and probably was surprised by what they found. But Wisconsin's a crossover state, so Democrats can vote in the Republican primary. And they asked them, the Democrats said they were going to vote in the Republican primary. How are they going to vote? It was Trump 73 to 2. Which doesn't surprise you if you know those are all working class populations.
Those are the lumberjacks.
Exactly.
The lumberjack Democrats.
Who have no interest in a conventional DeSantis type guy. The Scott Walker coalition is even dead in Wisconsin. That's what the Supreme Court race proved. That it is now you've got to win the old Bob LaFollette, Joe McCarthy, Dave Obey, Russ Feingold, populist Northwestern vote. I mean, that's what that's how Johnson rode Trump's coattails to beat Russ Feingold.
That's right.
As he stole enough of those votes in the and not only is it lumberjack country, you go to the West, it's Norwegians. And those are voters who are notoriously anti-war, notoriously populist. They're also notoriously anti-communist, for those who are trying to figure out the overlap of fighting Bob La Follette to Joe McCarthy. But McCarthy's anti-communism didn't focus, contrary to conventional wisdom, on Hollywood, on the universities, on labor activists, on private citizens. It focused on the State Department. It focused on the Pentagon. It focused on the upscale elites. He said, general, he was attacking generals. That's why they took him out. All of a sudden he needed a visit to the hospital. It's a hospital that a lot of people don't ever come back from there around DC. You can look it up. Own name. Oh, little side point. Guess who responded to me today on Twitter trying to defend the Trump indictment? The one and the only John Dean. He was trying to pretend that, for people that don't know, Clinton recorded interviews with a reporter, with a historian, that was about national security, that was about his presidential record information. In some cases would be designated classified information. He took those tapes with him. He never declassified them. He never declared them personal records. The Judicial Watch found out about it, said this fits the definition of presidential records that should be in the archives. And a federal court said no, because Clinton's unilateral act of taking him made them personal records, period. Regardless of the fact they may have national security information, may be classified, may otherwise fit the definition of presidential records. John Dean was going around to, well, this was interviews, so somehow magically, miraculously, that made it personal all along, which is utter hogwash. But the irony here is it's John Dean. For those that don't know, I responded to him in Twitter. I was like, why don't we talk about Watergate again, John? And we can talk about how John Dean did the second burglary, not for Nixon, but so that they would go in and find the photos of his fiancée, who the DNC routinely hoard out to high-ranking Democratic people who came into town. That's why they're obsessed with breaking into that particular desk, because that's where the photos were stored. The little secret of Watergate is that John Dean was trying to cover up for his whore wife. My God. If we're going to talk about record keeping.
But Robert, I mean, well, then that's a stupid thing for him to even rely on anyway, because one of the issues in the indictment is Trump talking to a reporter saying, hey, supposedly, look at this, I could have declassified it, blah, blah, blah. And then the other one, I mean, this is another thing they started to do under Trump that's very dangerous, and everyone's, forget about eyebrows should be raised. The hair on your back should be raised. The use of his attorneys, the threatening of attorneys, and the destroying of attorney-client privilege under Donald Trump. They first started with Michael Cohen, then they did it with Giuliani. I mean, this is not good, folks. You have to be able to be candor with your lawyer. You can't. The first thing a lawyer, when you get in trouble, is going to tell you is, don't bullshit me. What happened? Because if I get caught in like a lie, because I don't know all the facts, or not even a lie, but like if I get caught with my pants down because I don't know all the facts, I can't defend you to the best of my ability. For them to do this, Robert, and then somehow say it was okay for Clinton because by the act of talking to a reporter, it declassified it. It meant it was personal.
Well, and what are they attacking? Who are they attacking Trump for talking about? Standard. What's the beginning of the Trump indictment?
That's right.
Who is he talking about that they're saying is so illegal? Talking to a reporter.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's the absurdity of John Dean's point. They say that Trump violated the law by talking to a reporter, but John Dean is saying you could never violate the law by talking to a reporter. Which is it, Johnny?
Which is it? That's my point. Which is it? You can't just have, and this is the major problem. They want rules to apply to them differently. And again, this is the whole mindset that they don't really respect sovereignty being held with the voter. They don't want to have to explain their actions to you. If it's a double standard, they don't care. If there's no standard, it's just arbitrary based on who their friends are. They don't want to have to explain this to you anymore and pretend like this little charade that you're in charge still. They're done with it. They want to be openly the ones who are in charge, openly the ones who govern. And that's it. And they don't want you to have a damn say in it at all. That's what the lesson was from 2016. They really couldn't believe it. So they didn't act on it in real time. They didn't think the man would be elected. And when they were, despite their best efforts, when he was elected, that's not the lesson. Was not maybe we should have listened to the grievances of people in Appalachia. Maybe we should have listened to all those people in Northeastern Ohio who voted for Obama but now voted for Trump. Maybe we should have listened to 31 counties in Iowa that flipped from Barack Obama to Donald Trump. Maybe that wasn't the lesson they learned. The lesson was, damn, you people are stupid. I know better than you, and I'm going to rig this so we never have to go through this again. And that's it. So everybody wise up.
Aside from the indictments redounding to Trump's benefit, the economy redounding soon to Trump's benefit, which we can just discuss if some more people want about why the economy is going to tank. I got some people who want to bet me on it. That's a mistake. But the third factor it's going to benefit Trump is that what's going to happen is that Robert Kennedy will mount a serious challenge to Joe Biden. They will steal it from Robert Kennedy. And what that will do is open up even more voters who's best situated to pick up those Kennedy voters. And again, you don't need all of them. You just need a few of them to do well against Biden. And, Kennedy's voter group is a combination of older working class boomer Catholics that remember the name and that like the Kennedy, the legacy. And then the other group, though, are a lot of your working class. It's amazing how much it looks like the 1968 coalition of his dad. The professional class hates him. He probably, like his dad, won't come to terms with this. But the upper middle class will never vote for him in a million years. The working class is his only hope of being competitive. He'll continue to do better and better with them as he moderates his climate change policy, which he already has, moderates his gun policy, which he already has, and jumped on the. I mean, who of all the Kennedy haters out there had Robert Kennedy being the main candidate going down to the border and screaming about immigration? So as he adopts more populist positions, which is much like what his father did in 1968, then the net effect of it will be the populist voter group that he builds that is denied a nomination by unfair practices by the Democratic National Committee is ripe for the taking. But the only candidate who can inherit them effectively, just like with Bernie's vote in 2016, is Trump. And that's the third factor that the Biden people can see the writing on the wall as to how they get into trouble in 2024. And it's all Trump, 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 because everything's going in his direction.
Can Byron Donalds be the VP from Florida? I mean, it's the same situation.
I think he'd be a good one. I think he'd be a solid candidate. The reason why I like Lake is Lake's a woman. Lake's more charismatic. Lake, I would say, is even better than Donalds with the media. Donalds does pretty well with the media, but Lake is just a natural because he's been in that field for so long.
What would have to be done? Like Trump would have the same situation with DeSantis, like legally to do it, they would have to.
Oh, because Trump would have. All you have to do is after the election, one of them declare a different state their residency before the electors vote, and that would only matter if Florida has the deciding number of electors.
Okay, yeah,
that's why it's pretty easy. That's how Dick Cheney did it. Remember, Cheney and Bush were both from Texas in 2000. Cheney didn't change his residency until after the election, as I recall, because Texas electoral votes did matter. And so Cheney just said, oh, I'm now back in Wyoming, a couple of days before the electors voted. That was it. So yeah, Trump could, say it would probably be Donalds. He'd probably have Donalds declare his residency in D.C. or Virginia or something briefly. And then they go back, by the way, and go right back to Florida after that. It's just at the time of the electoral vote, the electors from that state cannot vote for two candidates that are both on the ballot.
Yeah.
That's why sometimes it doesn't even matter because Florida may not have the deciding number of electoral votes. The way it's going right now, it won't.
It won't.
Right now, it's going to be a clean sweep. 300 plus easy electoral votes for Trump.
Yeah.
He's looking at 100 plus electoral vote margin right now.
I think Virginia's on the verge of teetering.
Oh, well, Virginia. The states that would be, Virginia, Colorado, New Hampshire, Maine, and Minnesota would all be in play if he's up by as much as 7 points.
Yeah.
Because that's an 11-point swing. So you look at any state he lost by a 10 or less in 2020, and those states would all be in play. And as I think, I know Minnesota, I think, was under 10. New Hampshire was close to 10 or 11, but New Hampshire can swing a good bit. I think Maine was 8, maybe 8 or 9, Maine.
Yeah, full. You know what? I'll pull it up right now. The Emerson poll, I know he's doing another one too.
Because the Republican vote in the Northeast is so working class now. I mean, it's total reverse of the 1950s when it was
It
the
was like Biden +8 or something. I'm serious. That's it. Maine was
that's
7,
what I thought,
actually.
because
Yep.
the working class
Oh, no,
northern part of
I'm
the
sorry. What am I doing? 9. Sorry, it was 9. So
yeah,
well
so
within.
Maine's a
Yeah.
state because of the working class north, and that's a place where you also the Maine Republican primary. Trump's up by like 30 or 40. I mean,
Oh,
he's
it's a
just crushing
blowout.
everybody
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
the Maine Republican is not Olympia Snow kind of Republican. Is not any of those kind of old school Yankee Republicans that vote in the primary there in Maine. It's all the working class Northerners now that vote there. It's working class Catholics and working class Northerners
Yeah,
that vote.
Minnesota would
That's why,
go.
like, I had a
It would.
huge bet on Trump to sweep the Northeastern primaries, the Acela primaries in 2016, after he lost Wisconsin, because of the massive working class takeover of the Republican primaries in those states. Remember, he crushed everybody. It's like
Oh, yeah.
25-point victories. He was even money going into those primaries. Can you imagine? That was some of the easiest betting pickings of all time. I don't think we'll ever
He's up
get
50
anything that
points
good
in New
again.
Jersey. 50 in New Jersey. He's at 71% in New Jersey. So, I mean,
Yeah.
and this guy, and
Oh, yeah.
this idiot
How
gets
badly
in
do
his
you think
way.
he's going to beat Christie in New Jersey? How humiliating is that for
50.
if
He's going to beat
Christie's
him by
probably
50
going to
points
lose?
right now.
Like, Christie might not even break single digits in his own state.
Oh my God. Yeah,
Outside
like
of single digits. That would be embarrassing. Did you
totally
see
embarrassing.
he did Trump, people still are making the great memes for him. And so he shared a great meme of Christie because Christie kept talking about we need somebody big. And so somebody thought, oh, okay.
All
I know
right.
how you could meme that.
Yeah, I'm just looking around the map. I mean, Minnesota is closer than even some of these other states that we're talking about that would be close. Minnesota,
New
that's
Mexico might be in
7.
play.
Yeah, well, I
Particularly if
mean,
the
if he's going
Mexican
to do this
American vote
well,
keeps swinging by like double digits towards Trump.
if he's going to do this well with younger people and Hispanics, that's when all of a sudden some states get real screwy, and that actually and especially if there's third-party candidates on the ballot, because there is some of Biden's vote or his former vote that like 10% is our average. Actually, a little over 10%.
I would
It's
vote for like a
11%.
Manchin or somebody else.
Huh?
Yeah,
What
I
was-
mean that some of that upper middle class dissatisfied Biden vote would vote for someone like Manchin or another third party candidate.
Yep. And I'm looking at
But
the
Manchin's just
average.
threatening to run so he could get the pipeline. I can't imagine. You think he'll really run? I mean, he can't run for the Senate because he's DOA in
He's dead.
2024.
If it's justice. Oh, and by the way, look, I mean,
But
they're
of
going
course,
after
they're
Jim
going
Justice,
after
too.
Justice.
Yeah. It's outrageous, Robert. I mean,
Well, but that's
this is
Biden
what-
trying to keep Manchin from running. He's like, look, I'll try to indict your lead
I'll
opponent.
indict your opponent.
I'll give you that sweet pipeline deal.
Damn right.
Remember, they included a pipeline deal where you can't even sue. There's legal immunity for as that was one of those last minute carrots that was in the debt ceiling package. So he's doing everything he can for Manchin's leveraging his power pretty well. That not only that his decisive vote in the Senate, but the threat of a Manchin presidential campaign is keeping Biden to bribe him by every means possible.
Yeah. Yeah. And Nevada is definitely going. I'm looking back at the polling we did.
Man, Laxalt hired, I didn't know he hired Jeff Rowe. No wonder Laxalt lost.
Oh,
And
yeah.
Laxalt, I knew Laxalt. I talked to him previously. Now he's sending me emails to show up at a DeSantis thing. And I was like, man, just leave the state. You become useless overnight.
Dude, I'm telling you, this guy is stuck in my head. He's from Vegas. He's Hispanic. He voted for Biden, and he's like, man, I screwed up. I'm all for Trump now. And we put him up in the likely voter category for the Senate poll because he said, I'm more than 50%. I'm probably gonna show up. He didn't, but he said 100% I'm showing up for Trump. He's like, I don't know, this Laxalt guy is just dry, man. He's so funny.
They turned out to be right.
He was.
Blake Masters decided to talk about Social Security in Arizona. I don't know what inspired that. God bless Blake. There were just some. The fact that Trump is being blamed for these things is ludicrous. It's because Trump wasn't on the ballot that Laxalt's not in the Senate. That's the reality. Is that you got to have Trump at the top of the ticket to get these voters out, and particularly with the new younger working class coalition that's forming, that everybody's kind of asleep at in the Republican Party. They're still fighting 2012 all over again, and they still think the 2012 electorate exists when it doesn't. It's gone.
It's gone forever. There was a great article. I'm so sorry I forgot his name, but I didn't even read it until I saw him on War Room, and he said even because he lives in the DC area, and he's like, he's a Republican and he's a Trump supporter because of the argument he made, which is that they're not even lost in 2012. They want to resurrect the Bush coalition in 2004. And it was when I'm reading this, I'm thinking to myself, man, he's right, because I'm looking at the DeSantis versus Biden general election polling. And it looks like DeSantis is trying, that's his coalition, is a George Bush coalition.
And the problem is the key ones in that coalition are dead, literally.
Yeah, man, they're gone. And he doesn't even carry, Bush's base was the white evangelical. Trump crushes Bush support with white evangelical.
Yeah.
And if I showed this on locals.
He always did well with the non-church going white evangelical.
Yeah.
But he's going to do better with the church going. This is what Steve Deace doesn't get about what's happening in Iowa. Two things. I think Iowa won't be as dominated by the church going evangelical as the Republican caucus has been in the past. The reason why the Iowa polls have been wrong historically in Iowa ever since 1988 is because they underestimated that the caucuses would be dominated by church-going evangelicals who are the most organized, the best organized, most invested. That's how Pat Robertson pulled a surprise. That's how Huckabee pulled a surprise. That's how Santorum pulled a surprise. That's how Cruz could pull a surprise. But I think I think 2024 that caucuses might look a lot different. I don't think they're going to get 65% of the vote like they did in past caucuses, number one. And I think that's where Deace is mistaken on where I was trending. The other is, how, if you're a church-going evangelical, do you not reward the guy who overturned Roe v. Wade?
Yeah,
the only guy to deliver that promise in Republican presidential history.
That's everybody's problem, and then DeSantis moved. It was a bit of I got actually some inside information on this because of somebody I know who went to go work for him. And, it was a real gamble. He lost this argument. They said, support the 6-week ban so we can try to outflank Trump in Iowa. And we don't, because if they're not going to win New Hampshire, they know it. It's because it's just too working class. But they thought that maybe because it is dominated by, white evangelicals in the past, that they would be able to do this if they supported the 6-week ban. And my friend was like, this is the stupidest decision ever. You do this and you've lost a general election. So what are we even running for? And that's why they didn't understand why Trump was attacking the 6-week ban. This is how Trump wins the Rust Belt and nobody else does. All right. I mean, this is a guy who once said nice things about Planned Parenthood, but then said he hates abortion. But this is what you need to do. You have to kind of earnestly hold those views, Planned Parenthood did some good stuff in the neighborhood I was around, but abortion's just a horrible thing and we shouldn't support it. You have to have that kind of view. Why? Because that's how they view it in the Rust Belt. You can't be attacking Social Security. You can't. And when talking to Jack Posobiec about this, his family's from Pennsylvania, and he's like, there's just no way. My family will never vote for people who are in Congress who voted to weaken Social Security in some form or another. It will never
26 different times he voted to take Social Security away from people DeSantis did, between the ages of 65 and 70. Same, try to take away Medicare from people between the ages of 65 and 70. And he wanted the 23% national sales tax on everybody. And those are three very unpopular proposals. You can agree with them. You can think they're good ideas from a policy perspective. They are political suicide. Yeah. And it's additional reasons why. But I think what people are surprised at that you'd seen in Florida is how poor a retail campaigner DeSantis is. That was the other thing Steve Deace kept getting wrong. He was like, oh, DeSantis is a great retail campaigner. And I was like, what are you talking about?
Nobody's ever accused him of being a good campaigner.
This guy's never been glad. He's not a glad hander. He never has been. Bill Clinton, that's a man who could do retail politics.
Yeah. Oh,
I care. I feel your pain every day. I wake up.
He's so good. You have to admit it, though, man.
He was brilliant. He was brilliant. I mean, he was feeling something else too, apparently. But DeSantis is a pure one. He's part of the political class that has grown up thinking they're going to be in politics since they're 10. He's like Reese Witherspoon's character from the movie Election. They compete in Model UN and all those kind of things when they're in high school. These are the political class. That's why Ted Cruz does so poorly on one-on-one basis too. Remember those weird commercials that Ted Cruz ran with his family? They showed the behind-the-scenes stuff. It's this is the freakiest looking family ever. And it's because of this sort of stiffness, right? They're robotic, right? They read the script, and they are not. Hey, like Robert Kennedy Jr. gets out there, sincerely likes people. I mean, that's why they need to employ his retail campaigning skill more. I get their point is to build up a big volunteer base, build up a big grassroots small donor base so they can do repeat donations throughout the campaign cycle. That's what he's focused on through the summer, and in the fall he's going to shift to retail campaigning. But he likes people. If you've been around him, he actually and you can feel it. Trump likes people. You can sense it when he's around people. He's a germaphobe, so he's not real big on, but he's got past that too. DeSantis has always been a stiff. He's always been this is not, he looks like Frankenstein up there when he's trying to campaign.
I know.
He was never going to be a good retailer. That's another thing. Steve Deace was just asleep at the wheel on.
I know someone who trained him and helped him with debates and everything. She said it was awful. It was awful. If
you want to do a fake smile, what you got to be taught is imagine something that actually makes you smile, because a true smile is in the eyes, not in the here. And when he does that, smile, but the eyes don't go like this, it freaks people out. And then the weird laugh, that's like the Kamala Harris laugh that he's picked up somewhere. And where did this bobblehead thing come from? None of these things are,
and Governor
he's
Stitt,
killing his
Governor Stitt is like, Oklahoma loves Ron DeSantis at the event, and like nobody clapped. It was like crickets. And apparently the PAC Never Back Down had really tried to flood the zone, and I mean they did a lot and apparently spent a lot, and it's still how they AI image Trump with Fauci. Like all of this seems like a very AI non-organic thing to me, because they claimed he had this overflow crowd. The reporters are like, no, it's not. Like, I mean, everything just feels like a lie. Like it's all just fake. Yes. And and bobblehead. You guys want to see the bobblehead? You guys want to see the bobblehead? All right, I'll show you the bobblehead. They want to see DeSantis bobblehead in Japan. All right, I saw that.
It was like Hillary Clinton. Remember Hillary Clinton did that? People thought it was almost like a mini stroke live.
Yeah, that's what he did with this. Here we go.
Old show you falling behind Trump. Any thoughts on that?
Guys, I'm not a candidate, so we'll see if and when that changes.
That was terrible.
And that fall continued. So can we stop? Remember what they've committed the worst 101 politics sin. You never overpromise or hype something ever. And the hyping that his surrogates and supporters did, and he did himself. I'm not a candidate yet. I'm not. Wait till I announce. And the supporters droning on and on about wait till I announce. Folks, the trend has just continued to decline. I mean, now another 3 points in the tip poll. In the YouGov poll, he was in the mid-20s. And at one point, he was like high 30s or mid-30s in the YouGov poll. The Wisconsin poll, Marquette, their national polling, they always had DeSantis ahead. They were an awful poll. Like people had Trump plus 30 or Trump plus 25, and Marquette's like DeSantis plus 10. Like, okay, that's not the same universe, let alone even like there's no methodology can only explain so much, because the live caller polls, like this is why Fox News had them higher at one point. The live caller interviews, even when we do live, DeSantis does do better in that because it's super, super educated. Like in Florida, overall electorate's going to be like 14% post-grad. In live callers, it was 25%. So, I mean, that's just raw data. And meanwhile, that's why Morning Consult and Emerson, which is like us, mixed mode, that's why his support has been less, because I'm telling you, during presidential elections, Robert, especially, you may be able to get away with it in midterms just doing live caller. But in a presidential election cycle, if you don't mix up your modes, you're screwed, because you're not going to find these people. So many of these groups that we've been talking about, and even that's how, and there goes my son. That's how this works, and that's why we have the different universes that we have. Morning Consults, all panel. So they have DeSantis typically doing worse with them. IBD, I think they mix it up now. I got to look at it. I don't know. But Emerson, they're like us, almost pretty close. They'll text some people. They'll use an online panel. They'll even, traditional phone interviews. But you can't do your whole sample like that. That's why, media polling at one time anyway, DeSantis was doing a little bit better in that than some of the panels, because you're just not going to find, man, you're not going to find everyone in an online interview. Online you will. You are not going to find everyone during a presidential election cycle by simply live calling. And then the other polls were just grifts. I mean, dude.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There's so many of those fake ones.
Get out of here. You guys are embarrassing.
Basically DeSantis super PACs just making stuff up. I mean, the easy way to inflate DeSantis's numbers is to pretend that it's a 2012 primary electorate.
That's right.
Get rid of all the working class voters, and then you can look like DeSantis is within double, 10, 15 points. Yeah. Unless you do that, it's overwhelmingly and that's only going to grow as the political rallying effect to Trump continues with the indictments. As the economy continues to sink, which is Trump's number one issue, massive edge over DeSantis and Biden on that. And as people see DeSantis is a guy who does not grow well on people the more they see him. They only knew the hagiographic version of Ron DeSantis stands up to Soros. Ron DeSantis stands up to Disney. Ron DeSantis stands up to woke. Ron DeSantis stands up to Fauci. They haven't seen the whole history of Ron DeSantis, wanting to take away Social Security from people, take away Medicare from people, raise retail sales taxes on people, voted for TPP, voted for every bad trade deal, pushed the Maidan coup in Ukraine, backed by a bunch of war horse. Yeah. None of those things do most voters know. And the more they know they know everything there is to know about Trump. The information they don't know about DeSantis is disproportionately negative. That's why his negatives are going to be higher. They're already in some places already higher than Trump's.
They are. No, they are. Absolutely. His negative.
I think what I put out at Sports Picks, all the bets that we've recommended since March have been profitable. So, said to short DeSantis, said to bet Trump, said to bet Robert Kennedy, said at different times to either short or bet Biden, depending on where he's at, because they're not going to be able to replace Biden. All those bets have been profitable month after month after month. And the one free one I'll give out here is just continue to short DeSantis. DeSantis is at 25, 26%, depending on where it is in the political betting markets. Different people have different levels of access to those markets. But DeSantis is only going to decline. And the problem is he's so far behind, as you point out, in his own home state of Florida. If he was going to be competitive anywhere, that's where he'd be competitive. He's not. That means he's got no chance in South Carolina. He's got, you already have multiple South Carolina candidates on the ballot, so that sinks him anyway, because they eat into his vote a lot more than they eat into Trump's vote. And then he's not competitive in New Hampshire, and what the Iowa polls are showing, he's not competitive in Iowa either. And so as people start to realize, this guy doesn't stand a chance, Trump isn't going anywhere, Trump's base is rallying, the economy is making Trump the strongest candidate, that DeSantis is odds are just going to go down and down and down and down.
Talk more about and I know we're at 4 already. I don't know how much more time you got, but
I think we can wrap up in about 5 minutes.
Yeah. Can you do the economy when we do, in this 5-minute wrap? Because I agree with you. I think by the time the presidential election cycle is in full motion, those revisions from the Bureau of Labor Statistics the week before really scared me.
2/3 of working class Americans believe we are already in a recession. According to if you look at not consumer domestic production, but consumer domestic income, we are in a recession.
Yeah.
If you look at the work of Jeff Snyder, you look at the work of George Gammon, you look at the work of Wealthion, you look at the work of a lot of Michael Berry, you look at the work of a range of people in the Big Short context, other economic context. Every key economic indicator points to a massive credit crunch that is going to deeply enhance a problem that we haven't even fixed since the pandemic. Since the pandemic, we've barely recovered labor force participation rate. And much of that is by people working multiple jobs. So as those jobs start to disappear, China is not reopening its boom. China's got major internal problems because of its real estate bubble that's just going to continue to be an unmanageable bubble for them to try to avoid popping. But by avoiding popping it, they're just going to be stagnating. Production is down in China. Production is down in Germany. Production is down in Europe. You have all the ramifications of the oil issues and the Russian sanctions issues that continue to ripple throughout the European and Western economies. The U.S. dollar may stay strong in all of this because it's better than the yen. Japanese yen, I mean, the debt to GDP is getting way out of hand there. Japan's in serious trouble. It's still probably better than the euro. It's still probably better than a lot of, definitely better than the Chinese yuan, which is not in a position to compete at all. And so consequently, the dollar may stay strong globally, but we may still have stagnation with inflation domestically on a range of products and a range of goods. And then we may get deflation in the credit markets. And what that means is people that need the loans to keep their businesses functioning, to start new businesses, can't get those loans. And so you start to see a compounding problem that by a lot of objective, independent economic metrics that have been kept, we are heading towards something worse than 2007, 2008 over the next year. So that means, that's why I mean, wages have not stayed constant with inflation since 2021. Housing prices are way out of control. But for them to come back down means massive inventory. That's not going to happen because that's starting to stagnate because nobody can afford housing prices. So, your housing's out of control. Education and healthcare has never come within, manageable, sustainable price ranges for more and more people. Credit card debt is at the highest level it's ever been, while interest rates are surging and spiking. So even if they dramatically reduce the inverted bonds have been telling us for a year now, we're about to get completely crushed economically. And that will likely stay that way, according to the bond market, which is at a high rate of accuracy in this, for about 18 months to 2 years. So they're predicting by late 2023, we start to head into a severe recession, and we don't come out of it until 2025.
Yeah.
And so what that does is Trump's going to be running with a president with an unpopular war in Ukraine that he continues to try to escalate involvement in, that continues to fail. All those counteroffensives they've been launching the last 7 days keep losing, and they're going to get worse as they walk into the Russian honey trap of getting past the first line, and they step right into a death zone.
The propaganda is unbelievable, Robert.
Oh, completely. They're just pretending at different levels. What happens when Vlad does a celebration in Kiev or Odessa within a year? So that's an unsustainable war that will be increasingly unpopular. You have a scandal-ridden president already because of his own scandals and because of his attacks on President Trump with the legal system. And then you add to that a complete disaster of an economy for a guy that's already in the low 30s before all these things come to full culmination. So you add these things up, he's going to be in George W. Bush 2007, 2008 territory, which was as low as 25, 26% approval, with a candidate who, when he was president just 4 years ago, the economy was great. There was no global war. These problems didn't exist. All you got to argue about was whether he was too mean in a tweet to a media personality. So that's why Trump is in a perfect position to do well. But for everybody else out there, the economy is going to get really, really ugly over the next year.
Look at real hourly compensation. I mean, it was already previously published to be down 0.3 of a point. It was down 1.7 in non-farm. In business, it was down 1.6, even though these revisions are criminal. This is not. They're not reporting.
Yeah, for those that don't know, they put out fake numbers, and then
they're putting out
6 months later, they admit that their numbers were fake all along.
I'm telling you, they're doing this for real. The New York Post caught them doing this during the election with Obama and Romney, the month right before the election, because no president had ever been reelected with unemployment 7% or above. They just happened to drop in the sixes, and then they found out that was just a total fudge. And the New York Post had some whistleblower or something. But manufacturing, labor productivity down 2.5%. Output was down a percent. Hours worked were just slightly down a little bit, but hourly compensation, they initially reported it was up 2.1. That was bull. And then real hourly compensation, they initially reported was really down 1.6. It was down twice that. These are criminal revisions, man. Labor productivity is down. Labor costs are up. This is headed in a terrible, terrible neighborhood. And this bill that they just passed with somebody had been bringing up the interest on the debt. man, this bill they just passed, Robert, took a lot off the table, like took a lot of tools off the table for us to try to get our arms around this thing. You can't cut your way out of it now, and you certainly can't grow your way out of it. At some point, there's going to be a reckoning. And this is, I mean,
Absolutely. And so it's bad news for everybody economically to have to live through. It's a perfect recipe for a Trump resurgence in 2024. And that's why it's Trump, despite the indictment, or actually because in part of it, Trump is in better position now to retake the presidency and do more with the presidency because of his deeper and growing awareness of the dangers the deep state poses by their personalization of their attacks on him than ever before. That there is a better chance of a real populist presidency in 2025 than at any time in an anti-deep state presidency on that part since John Kennedy in 1962. I mean, that's the degree to which the system is in deep trouble, and they know it. That's why they're resorting to extreme remedies. Extreme,
indeed. All right, Robert, what do you got coming up?
Just we'll be at vivabarneslaw.locals.com. We'll do some bourbons during the week when I can. Otherwise, just regular legal work this week.
All right, sounds good, brother. As always, another great episode. All the best. Give Dave my best. I'll talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon.
Robert Barnes, ladies and gentlemen. All right, I'm going to just roll this out of here real quick. I'm going to say Wednesdays, of course, will be Inside the Numbers. Don't miss it because we are going to go in them a little bit, obviously more in detail than even I did today. More of that's that first segment, really, because what it comes down to at this point is whether or not they're going to scare voters, and it just doesn't look like that's going to happen. So I want to talk more about this, and I didn't get the chance to talk with Robert about this, but the likelihood of the Republican Party being fractured, I think, is a high likelihood if this little plan of theirs were to succeed. And I think that I'm not alone here. The other polls are starting to show this now as well. It's just they're not really making that case. I think they're leaving a lot of good headlines, on the table. And that's probably intentionally. But we're going to talk about it because I think this fracture, would be a way worse fracture than what we're seeing in 92. And it's time we start estimating how big that could be. All right. So with that in mind, noon Eastern Standard Time. Don't miss it. We're going to have some cool guests this week, and stick with us. All right. So no book club on Sunday. It's Father's Day. We're skipping it this week for book club people, YouTube and locals. When, even if I wanted to do it, no, I don't really care about Father's Day. Just relax, like at most other fathers. I don't want to take it away from somebody else. All right, so we have dads in the book club, So I don't want to make them have the decision of either missing a week or not. But great book, great conversation yesterday. And if you haven't gotten it, it's The Ideological Origins of the American Revolution, Bernard Bailyn, who wrote in response to a bunch of revisionist leftist historians who, like the New York Times' 1619 Project, had started in the 20th century to argue that, the American Revolution was actually caused by economic reasons, and chief among them to preserve the institution of slavery. We just went through the chapter that eviscerates it. The New York Times once said that you cannot even understand the American Revolution without reading Bernard Bailyn's Ideological Origins of the American Revolution. Now, of course, they put together a project that runs completely counter to what his work says, but it is the seminal book against that because it's not, it's garbage. It's not true. The chapter we just read, again, we're in still because it's a huge chapter, eviscerates that argument. The idea that founders were doing this so that they could preserve slavery is nuts. They had already noticed, they were conscious of the contradiction between their countless pounding on the table for liberty while still having the institution of slavery. And it's a total nutcase, untrue falsehood to argue that when the most independent, pro-independent colony, Massachusetts, had already voted in 71 and in 74 to ban it. And it was the British governor who vetoed it. The most pro-independent people were also the most pro-abolitionist. And it doesn't make any sense for the South to vote for independence and hurt themselves, that actually was against their own economic interests. And it was against their own interest in preserving free labor, which is basically what it is. All you do is pay for the cost of the slave up front, and then they get free labor. So they voted against that interest. So it's just so stupid. But it's a great book, and you guys should check it out. All right, noon Eastern Standard Time, more Inside the Numbers. What are the odds? Be back next month. All the best, folks. Thanks for watching.